The date that cost me a kidney. My name is Janelle. I'm a 21-year-old student in Lille. Tired of not finding true love, I decided to lose my virginity to my best friend. I then found a fantastic hookup with whom I got along wonderfully on every level for 3 months. Then it was time to throw myself away because I'm still in love with my ex. Yes, I'm still pissed off. Being the fragile little thing I am, I made my first suicide attempt, headed to the emergency room and then the CPAA, Social Assistance Program. For the smarter among you, you'll have gathered that I'd already been depressed for a few months, under medication I mean, with a strong penchant for alcohol. To complete this self-destructive process, what better way than dating apps? The match. A few weeks after leaving the CPAA, I matched a lot to meet new people and, above all, to forget my dear and tender hookup. I always meet guys at my place for a first date because I have zero experience, and that's what I did for my very first date. One day, I matched a guy. Let's call him Mathieu. Mathieu isn't very handsome, he has a party boy look and a few extra pounds, but I'm no Beyoncé either, so I matched. We laughed a little, we had some tastes in common, and most importantly, he smokes weed, so I thought, an ideal plan to enjoy a few joints between some intimate moments. He gave me some personal information like his address, no idea if it's real, and his job, or rather his old job. He just got fired. Work or no job, I don't care. I don't want to spend my life with him anyway. I explained to him that I'm fragile and that I've just come out of some kind of psychiatric clinic, that I'm depressed, blah blah blah. All this just to make him understand that he shouldn't play with me. I also tell him that I'm looking for a hookup, but with conversation, connection, cuddles, etc., and not just a 20-minute hookup and it's done. He assures me that's what he's looking for too, and that he's also very affectionate. Perfect. After only 1 or 2 days of talking, we agree on a date. Mojito night at my place, and he brings back some joint rolling equipment. The date. Mathieu arrives, and he's frankly not great. Even worse than in the photos. He has a dirty look, like greasy hair and a stained t-shirt. A kind of teenager who's still finding his feet despite being 26 years old. In short, I'm far from wet, but I desperately need company. I offer to pour the drinks while I choose a movie on the TV. He obliges and goes into the kitchen to make 2 mojitos before joining me on the couch. We chat for a bit. He's not very smart or interesting. I drown myself in my drink, hoping to liven up the evening all by myself. And then a 3-day blackout. Reenactment. According to our dear Mathieu, we then drank and smoked while watching a movie before going into the bedroom. I vaguely remember being naked on my bed and seeing him, fully clothed, standing over me, looking at me before turning on his heel and slamming the door. My phone is running low, my alarm doesn't go off. I'm away from a work group meeting, so my friends are worried and call me. They can't reach me, so they contact my sister, but she also gets voicemail. The girls come downstairs and ring the bell again and again, but there's no answer. They call the fire department, who manage to open the downstairs door, but not the door to my apartment. They knock on the door calling for me, and I finally open it. Wearing a blanket to hide my nakedness, I look at them in incomprehension. The firefighters concluded I was hungover and left while my friends helped me get dressed. They also thought I'd had too much to drink. They noticed that my body was covered in yellow betadine on my arms, legs, stomach, etc. I told them I burned my arm yesterday and tried to treat it, but there was no sign of a burn or any other injury on my arm. In fact, I didn't even have any betadine. They took my cat and took me back to one of their homes since I was in a comatose state. I had trouble speaking, I seemed completely lost, as if numb, and I even seemed to have trouble thinking. The next day, my sister came to get me to stay at her house for a few days. Everyone was convinced I had tried to commit suicide with pills and alcohol. After constantly complaining about vulvar pain and blood loss, my pill completely stops my period. My sister took me to the hospital. I explained that I had potentially unprotected sex since I was unconscious. I was given a hepatitis B vaccine, anal and vaginal swabs, a hair sample, and so on. They advised me to file a complaint and sent me to the gynecological emergency room. The next day, I finally regained consciousness. My family and friends noticed it right away. I was a little more alert and my words were coherent. I went to the gynecological emergency room. They took more samples and gave me preventative treatment for AIDS. Over the course of a week, I had a series of appointments for blood and urine samples, etc., and I went to file a complaint, drawing on the testimony of my friends who found me at home, as well as my sister who took care of me. After talking about it to people my age, older people, but especially medical staff and the police, the term organ trafficking was widely discussed. They think the guy chickened out at the last minute. Despite my complaint, my sheets covered in betadine, my ripped underwear, and the blood on my apartment doors, my attacker got nothing, and I'll never know what really happened or what he really wanted. I want to point out that I used to drink and smoke in addition to my medication, and I never ever had a 3-day blackout. I'm almost convinced he put something in my drink. It feels good to talk about it anyway, thank you. The day a pedophile almost took me. Not paranormal, it actually happened when I was in 8th grade. So it was a late Thursday afternoon. At the time, I was in 8th grade in a private Catholic middle school. Not an important detail. Not far from my home. A private residence with several neighbors. An important detail. Except that. On the day of the incident, in the last hour, we had study time. And in study time, it was a bit chaotic. Everyone was talking. And we were warned several times that if we continued talking, the invigilator would keep us until 5 p.m. instead of letting us go at 4:20 p.m. as usual. And because of a group of unruly students in our class, well, we were kept until 5 p.m. Note that, unlike me, almost everyone in my class goes home by bus. I have to take either the city path or a slope that leads to the residences, where no one ever goes. And that evening, as often, I take the slope because it's faster. I put music in my ears, I walk, everything's fine. And I almost had a heart attack when I felt a hand grab my hand. So I turn my head, and what I see is a little girl of about 8 or 9 years old with a school bag on her back. She looks normal in itself, just like a little girl coming home from school. Except that she keeps my hand in hers and she walks, as if nothing is happening, without saying a word. Already I'm a little perplexed because I don't know this little girl. She's holding my hand really tight, and above all, she seems very tense. And I'm starting to get the famous bad feeling. So even though it seems a little weird to me, I say to myself, maybe she's confusing me with someone she knows. So I'm about to ask her what she wants, why she's there. But I hear footsteps right behind us and a male voice calling me. Instinctively, I turn around, and I see a man who introduces himself in a rather polite manner. He introduces himself as the little girl's father, and that he's sorry for the inconvenience she may have caused. So me, as stupid as I am, I don't answer, and I quickly realize a disturbing detail. They don't look alike at all. Like really, not just the hair color or anything. Not at all. The little girl is black, she has black hair, black eyes, and he is white-skinned, old, his eyes and hair are light, not a single feature matches. In short, the complete opposite. But I force myself to tell myself that there could be 1,001 reasons why they don't look alike, and that after all, well, it's none of my business. I turn to the little girl and she looks terrified, so I don't really know why, so don't even ask me. I said, "She's my little sister, who are you?" I very quickly regretted, on the one hand, because if it really is her father, it's super humiliating, and on the other, because if it turns out that it's not her father, I don't know what he could do, and I'm not sure I'll be able to ensure the safety of me or her. I tried to leave then, and the man blocked our way. He keeps his smile, and he now introduces himself as her uncle, distant family, hence the fact that I don't know him, but he considers himself a bit like a father to the little girl, so that would explain that. And he was more and more insistent, and a detail that made me laugh, sometimes he tried to grab the little girl's hand on the fly. Little girl who hadn't said a word since the beginning, by the way. So I directly asked him, "Do you know this man?" She shook her head no. I'm not gonna lie, I almost shit myself seeing her move her head from left to right. So I'm really in trouble, and so I sprint with the little girl towards my house, cheating on the guy in front, and I don't hear any footsteps behind that indicate he was following us. So I just ran down the slope to the gate of my residence, and when I typed in the code, I saw that yes, this Gaga was chasing us. Sure, he left a little after, but he was chasing us. Without lying, it was the most intense moment of my entire life. Because I missed the code once before I could finally enter the residence and literally slam the door in his face when he only arrived barely 1 meter from us. All he had to do was extend his arm and we were in trouble. I sprinted back across the garden, but not to go home, but to a hall leading to a large building with residential units inside. I live right next door. The reason is simple. A neighbor who lives on the 2nd floor is a police officer, and he's better equipped to fight the guy if he comes than my family. However, I strongly believed that if he wasn't there, we were in trouble. Luckily, he was there. We called the police and he waited for the man armed with a taser, but after 20 minutes, he still wasn't there. And in fact, he had probably just left. In the end, apparently this person is known to the police for pedophilia and is now behind bars. Regarding the girl, apparently she's mute, which explains why she didn't speak. And now I'm taking the city to get home because more people are around and it's less isolated. That's the end. I hope you enjoyed it. Babysitting turns into a nightmare. Hello, my name is Thibaut. I'm 20 years old and I'm going to tell you how my babysitting job turned into a nightmare. The story took place last summer in a small Breton town when I was 19. It all started in the summer of 2021. As a student, I had to look for a seasonal job to finance my studies. I worked several jobs as a waiter, a factory worker, and a cleaner, but I quickly grew tired of all these jobs. Then I found a compromise between vacation and work, babysitting. So I signed up with a babysitting agency and worked there for almost 2 months. I babysat for one evening, at weddings for a week or two. At the end of July 2021, my agency offered me a babysitting position, not far from my home, to look after a child for 2 weeks at the end of August. A few days later, the agency's protocol requires me to meet the child's family in advance, to meet them, ask questions, and make contact with them. I've always found this more reassuring. Upon arriving at the family's home, I meet Noah, a 2-year-old boy, and his dog, Scooby. His mother shows me around the house. Noah and the dog adopted to protect and reassure Noah. When she told me this, I cringed at the size of the dog, which didn't even reach my calf. Then she told me that I was saving her life because she was going back to work soon, and that Noah's stepfather is a fisherman, and therefore he's never home since he's at sea. 2 weeks later, I arrive at the family's home to begin my care. Everything goes well for the first 2 days. Every morning, we go for a walk with Noah in his stroller and the dog in the woods, as they've had this habit since Scooby arrived home. A small detail, we always go through the back door of the garage, and we always leave it open for convenience. Things started to get strange on Wednesday, the 3rd day of care. That morning, we went for a walk for almost 2 hours. But when I got home, I felt a sense of tension. Maybe it was just my imagination because I didn't know the house very well, but my charger, for example, had been unplugged and left on the table. The downstairs bathroom door was half open, even though I thought I'd closed it. I didn't say anything to my mother when she came back because I thought it was stupid. But the next day when I came back from the walk, the stair gate was open, even though it's always closed since Noah is small, and the remote control had moved. I remember the strangest thing was the smell of perfume that wasn't usually there. I started to worry that someone was in the house, but after searching everything, there was no one there. That same evening, I asked the mother if anyone came by during the day to clean, for example, because I had the feeling things were moving around. The mother's expression changed. She no longer had a big, reassuring smile. She started to get worried and stressed. To that, she replied, "No, no one. But take pictures of the house before the next walk, and if it happens again, call me directly." I found that response very strange and not at all reassuring for someone who needs reassurance. Nothing strange happened on Friday. The photos were the same as when we got back, and the weekend was coming, so I didn't babysit. I came back on Monday rested and de-stressed. We went for a walk as usual around 10 a.m., but the heavy rain and thunderstorm made us return a little earlier than planned. The short walk still allowed Noah to fall asleep in his stroller. But when I arrived in front of the garage, Scooby pulled on the leash and didn't want to go back in, which was starting to stress me out. I thought he was sensing something he shouldn't have. I carried him, went into the garage, left Scooby next to Noah, who was in his stroller, and went into the house to get a towel for the dog because he was going to make a mess all over the house. But as soon as I got inside, I could still feel the tension hanging over me, which was normal because there was a bag that wasn't there before lying on the dining room table. I'm very scared at that moment, which means I wasn't crazy last week. I approach the stairs, the gate is open. I hear noise upstairs coming from my parents' bedroom. I know I felt a lot of fear, anxiety, but above all courage because I went up to the bedroom. I'm behind the door, I hear footsteps, someone moving things, someone in a pretty hurry. I don't know how or why, but I pushed the door open to see the person in front of me. I hoped it was the mother, but it was a fairly tall man, dark-haired and a bit muscular. He turns around when he sees me. I can't move anymore. We look into each other's eyes without saying anything. I felt like it lasted forever. I was afraid he was going to jump on me and hurt me. I had a bad feeling about him. Then the man broke the awkward and tense silence by saying, "Hey, hello. You must be the babysitter? I'm Noah's father." I can't tell you how relieved I was. I introduced myself and asked him what he was doing there since he wasn't supposed to be home this week. He replied, "I came home early because of the weather." A banal response that clearly showed he was a fisherman. I felt reassured. I was starting to relax. I remembered that Noah's father would bring everything back to his son without really listening to me, like, where is Noah? Is he dressed? Can I see him? But I told myself that for a father, this was normal. In this mixture of emotion, I said 2 important things. The first, Noah is in the garage, sleeping in his stroller. At that moment, I felt stupid because I still had this bad feeling about this man, and I blurted out Noah's whereabouts. The second, by the way, do you know where Snowy's towels are? Snowy is my dog's name, and in my haste, I mixed up the name with Scooby. But what he answered really chilled me to the bone. Snowy's towels are in the bathroom. The problem with his answer was that he didn't repeat the dog's name, as if he didn't know it. I keep an embarrassed smile and go to the bathroom. I send a message straight to the mother to tell her there's a man in the house, that he claims to be Noah's father, and that I feel in danger with him. I go down the stairs with a towel to pretend everything's okay, and I hear the man getting more and more agitated upstairs. He calls out to me on the stairs and says, "Since I'm here, you can leave. That gives you an afternoon off." I tried to invent a myth so as not to leave Noah and the dog alone with him, like, I have to work my hours, it's for the insurance. Which is nonsense, because normally I wouldn't have said no to an afternoon off. But the man insists that I leave. While thinking about what to do, I walked into the kitchen and came across a family photo hanging on the fridge, with Noah, his mother, and a man who didn't look at all like the one currently in the room. I was very lost. I still felt tense, a bad feeling, and all the evidence pointed to the man not being who he claimed to be. But on the other hand, a part of me told myself it wasn't possible, that this only happens to other people. At that moment, I must have felt the paternal instinct inside me. But I silently ran to the garage, took Noah in one arm and Scooby in the other, and carried them into my car. I started the engine and drove off to get us to safety. A few minutes later, the mother asked me to come back home because the police were waiting for us. She was in tears and found her son safe and sound. The police questioned me, but no one could give me an answer. My custody was suspended for the entire week because the mother took time off to be with her son. And it was a week later that the mother called me to explain what had happened. The man was arrested at his home, and it was indeed Noah's father, whom the mother was married to before divorcing and meeting the man who was a fisherman. He lost custody of Noah because he was violent and often under the influence of drugs. He admitted to having repeatedly broken into his old house, where Noah and his mother still live, in search of memories and love from a family that no longer wanted to give it to him. That explains why things were moving and why there was that smell of perfume. Also, he let himself in through the back door because he knew it was never locked when he lived there. And the reason he didn't know the dog's name was because he was adopted right after his parents' separation, to protect Noah if his father wanted to harm him. The most gruesome detail for last? They found a bag at the foot of Noah's bed with his belongings inside. The police think that if I had left without the child, the father would have kidnapped him. So, that's the end of this very traumatic story for me. After that, I only babysat once, and it was at a wedding. Congratulations, you made it out of this story alive. But not every ending is this lucky. If these true stories gave you chills, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got more terrifying tales waiting for you. Check out one of the other videos on screen now. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next story.